Hi friends, it's Carly and I'm back again with another review. So we have finally made it to the very end of our Retro Spider-Man figure series, and of course I saved the man for last. Today we're going to be looking at Spider-Man. But before I do that, I just want to remind you guys about the rest of the schedule. I'm going to keep reminding you because this will be a day where I'm posting really late, and so I just want to make sure you guys know what's up. I have 2 more Age of Apocalypse figures plus Sugar Man, so that's 3 more consecutive days of videos, and I will be posting probably most of those in the morning, although there will be a day with 2 videos where there will be one in the morning and the evening. So to make sure that you don't miss any of my videos, please subscribe to my channel and turn on your notification bell. This is going to be a late one, so if you have your notification bell turned on, you will be all set to go as soon as I post. With all of that said, let's look at this figure. I am such a big Spider-Man fan, you guys. I've been waiting for this, and let's just start talking about him. So the very first thing that I noticed about this Spider-Man figure is that he has a very different overall finish to him than any of my other Marvel Legends figures. And maybe I notice it more just because of the color and pattern on his costume, but he has definitely the feeling that he is molded from clay, colored clay, especially in the head. It's sort of matte, but it just has like a different feel altogether, that the plastic, like the red and the black, are made of the same material rather than being a paint or an overlay. And I think that that is achieved with a finish over the paintwork when it's finished. But for me, and I'm not entirely sure why this is, but it really adds to the retro feel of the figure and makes it feel like more authentically retro, if that makes sense. So it's something that I have not seen on any of my other figures. I really notice it here, and I really, really like it. It's so satisfying. And I think that you can kind of see the contrast here between the texture on his head and on his body. It's a little bit shinier, but there is this overall like mattifying of the figure that just has a really, really cool vibe to it. This is his classic costume with the Fat Spider. I call it the Fat Spider. I don't know if you guys have other names for it, or if there is another name for it, let me know. I call it Fat Spider. And yeah, it's just really, really good looking. The web detail is really clean and crisp all throughout the costume and his mask. Aesthetically, there is something very comic booky feeling about this. And now I don't want to sound silly when I say that, but this literally feels like a comic book drawing come to life. And I mean, obviously it's based on the comic book character, but it's just something about the way that the colors work and the way that they texturized this figure. It just feels so, I don't know, it just really feels like a picture jumping off the page. That's the best way that I can describe it. But I'm really, really happy with it. So the accessories that he comes with, he's got, on the figure, he's got his web shooting hands. And then he comes with a second head. You can see the difference in the eyes. This is sort of like his squinting head, and this is his eyes open head. So that's about all the expression we got from Spidey back in the old days. And then he comes with fist hands. And again, you can see, I'm gonna get focus on these, but you can see how successful the web detailing is across this figure. It's so sharp. It just looks really, really nice to me, and it really does feel like somebody hand drew it. It doesn't feel like paint, and it doesn't feel like a sticker overlay. And it has to be one of those, but I'm not sure how they achieve this effect. It's probably just a finish painted over everything in the final stage of the process, but whatever it is, it works, and I really, really like it. I am really disappointed, not really disappointed because I have other web accessories, but I'm a little disappointed that this didn't come with a web accessory or, yeah, any type of web accessory. I feel like this should have come with all of the accessories that he needed, and I feel like those are pretty necessary. But with the 2 heads and the 4 hands and the dozens of other Spider-Man figures that I have that do have web accessories, I'm okay with it. But if this were my first ever Spider-Man figure, it would be really disappointing that he didn't come with a web accessory. So I think that is a misstep, but overall, the rest of the accessories on this figure are really, really good. So the body type on this one is perfect for me. He's like got a nice sort of mid-sized overall body, and he is highly articulate, which is really great. Although some of the missteps I've been talking about recently with the leg articulation and hip articulation keep him from being able to do some of his most iconic poses, but we'll get to that in just a second. So starting up the head, we have a great range of motion. We do get that weird separation, but it's not really too bad, and the costume kind of camouflages it. So here is our look down, and here's our look up. There is quite a bit of negative space there, but you can still get a really good look up before you hit that point. So I'm never upset at a head that goes really far back or really far forward, but the negative space is kind of an issue. Kind of an issue for me, but you can manipulate it. He has that really nice sculpted neck that I was just talking about instead of the smooth sort of nub that goes up. This Spider-Man has butterfly joints, which I think is important. I think that he needs. And you can see like how that can work with dozens of different Spider-Man type poses. So we have a really good range of motion in the shoulders back and a little bit forward here. But I was happy to see butterfly joints. We've got a good lift. Not as flat as I'd like to see though. So we have a good lift in the shoulders, but really we're going to be getting that range of motion in the butterfly joints rather than in the lateral lift that I like to see. So you can manipulate this figure to get all the poses that you want, you know, but as far as a pure lateral lift, it's not as high as I would normally like to see. We have the 360 degrees in the bicep. A great double jointed elbow. It probably doesn't go as far as I would like to see it go because of the bicep, but it's still pretty good. And then, as always, we have really good 360 degree in the wrist. That's always fine, I find. And then we have the forward and the backward. And those work great on this because there's literally no obstruction of any kind on the wrist. So the arms are good. I wish the lateral lift was better, but with the butterfly joints, you can kind of manipulate him to get good poses out of that anyway. With the torso, we have really, really great motion, you know, and for this figure, it's super important that he be really flexible. So I would be critical of a figure that didn't have that type of flexibility. We do get a fair amount of negative space here in the back, but that is because, and in the front really, in the chest cavity, but that is because this is where our turning, which we would normally have in the waist, lives. So that's up in the torso, and that's really great for these type of leaning postures, which makes more sense for Spider-Man. So I'm okay with the fact that he doesn't have the turning in the waist, that the turning is in the torso, but I do wish that they had done a little bit more to combat that negative space that we get when we lean him all the way back or all the way forward. But as you can see, when you're leaning him back and you have him at like a shelf distance, it's really not that bad. So I'm all right with that because of all of the additional movement that we get from having this turning up here in the abdomen instead of in the waist. So the lateral lift on the legs is really good, but the problem is that because of his calves, we kind of get a limited bend in the knees here. So you can't get that really good, like, you know, Spidey pose, like where he's like sort of landed, you know what I mean? You guys know the one. I messed with this a lot. You need to be able to do that pose. I'm just saying. It's like one of the most iconic poses that Spidey does, like when he lands on the ground, and you can't really get his knee to bend enough to get like that squat in the upper body to have him like land with his hands on the ground. So that's frustrating. I'm sure there's people who could maybe manipulate him to get really close to it, but I think that there needs to be a little bit more bending in the knee. I think the calf needs to obstruct that bending movement a little bit less so that he can get all the way up to his butt, and that the lateral lift again needs to go out farther and have like a better rotation in the hip than it does right here. But we do have 360 degrees. It just doesn't, you don't get as good an effect because it doesn't lift all the way. 360 degrees in the thigh here, and then he has a turning boot to 360 there, and then he has really great ankles. So he goes all the way back like this, all the way forward, and not only is this really flexible, it is so smooth. So you can really get great movement in the ankles with this figure. So for the flexibility, you know, I'm going to be a lot more critical with a Spider-Man figure than any other figure because that's one of his main features as far as like a physical feature that you can see is his flexibility, whether he's flying through the air or when he's fighting, he's acrobatic. And this is a really good figure for that. There are a couple of missteps, but like I said, they're pretty nitpicky, like not being able to perfectly get that pose and the lateral lift in the arms. But with the flexibility that we get with these butterfly joints, that sort of compensates for the loss there. And the really flexible torso also makes up a great deal for that. So for the most part, I'm really, really happy. Not for the most part. Overall, I'm really, really happy with this figure. I can't say enough about how fantastic looking he is. So if I were to put this figure on my shelf and never play with him, which is not gonna happen, I'm definitely gonna play with this toy, but if I were to never play with him and he just stood on my shelf like this, I am 100% happy with the way that this figure looks. He is so spot on, so sharp. The webs are so crisp on his costume, which I didn't realize how important that would be to me until I saw how crisp and clean looking they are, and they just look so fantastic. So I'm really happy with the accessories pack, the head swap. I will probably actually be using this head. I just like it better. I feel like it's when Peter is saying something snarky, and that's how I like to see him. So the two heads are really great. There's a really great ability in this series to be able to interchange Peter's head with Spidey heads and the Spidey Sense head. So there's like actually a pretty good combination of things you can do if you get all of the figures in this series and kind of like mix and match and recombine and other Spider-Man figures. I really, again, do wish that he would have come with a web, and that's a bummer, but if you have any Marvel Legends Spider-Man figures, you've got webs. So I'm just going to use some of the ones that I already have. So that is, I mean, this is a really fun figure, you guys. I mean, I honestly just don't have any complaints about the way that he looks. And I'm sure as I play with him, I'll figure out ways to do the things that I want to, because he has all of the articulate points that I'd expect to see, just some of them aren't functioning quite as strongly as I would like to see. So I am really, really, really happy with this Spider-Man. As one of my favorite characters, I'm always going to be a little bit more critical on the figure, and this one does not have much to criticize. If you have been working on this line, you will be happy with this Spider-Man figure. Honestly, now that I'm finished with everything, I have to say for me, as much as I do love this Spider-Man figure, I love him because he's my favorite character, but I have to say, I feel like Daredevil and Green Goblin were the strongest two figures in this line, with Spidey being a really close third, and all of the figures being really successful. Electro, Gwen Stacy, and Peter Parker were all fantastic. There were some missteps with accessories packs, but it's actually really hard to rank them, and to have some that end up being my favorite figures of the year, like Green Goblin, Daredevil, and this Spider-Man overall is really super impressive for a single line. So that is it on the Retro Spider-Man figure line. We are completely through it. I've been so happy with this. I can really enthusiastically recommend to action figure fans, Spider-Man fans, just collectors in general. Every single figure in this line is worth picking up. There were no duds. There were no major missteps that made the line not work. The figures go well together. They are cohesive as a set. They're really well constructed and really beautiful looking. And I haven't been this happy with a complete line in a really long time. Like, there are no foibles on this one like I've seen on others. Like, usually every line has one issue. Not here. This line literally has no big issue. Every single figure is a success, almost at the highest level. So it was a great investment. I'm really glad I got them, and I highly recommend that you guys do too. So that is it for Retro Spider-Man. I'm glad we ended on a high note, and tomorrow we will be doing another Age of Apocalypse figure, plus I will be looking at Snake Eyes from the G.I. Joe Classified series. So those will be my 2 videos of the day. Let me know if you guys want to see Wild Child or Dark Beast next. Those are the last 2 figures I have, and then obviously we'll be doing Sugar Man very last. Thank you guys so much for watching my videos. You guys have been commenting. I'm super appreciative for that. Keep telling me what you want me to see, and I will keep going. I've got more figures coming up, and we're just going to keep this train rolling with videos every day until I run out. Thank you so much for watching, friends. I hope you have a great night, and we'll be back tomorrow with another one. Bye, friends.